Hey guys, I'll be talking about LinqPad today. I'll be unboxing it for you, introducing it, and showing you how to get it to work with Sitecore. So LinqPad is like a scratch pad. Think of it as JS Fiddle without the web interface. It allows you to put a bunch of code and see what it's going to look like without you actually going through the motions of opening it up in Visual Studio, opening a project, getting it to compile, and then going through the debug or trying to preview on a website. So it's like a sandbox really, because it can take your compiled assemblies, which is kind of cool because if you have that DLL compiled of your project, you can just feed it into it and you can run debug statements and code against the objects that you have compiled previously in Visual Studio. It takes your SQL connections and allows you to do queries, as well as all the latest languages like C#, F#, Link, the not so latest languages like VB. Like, who still uses that? Anyone? There's two ways of going through code with LinqPad. The first one is you can do blocks of code. You can debug blocks of code using statements. And then there's something called expressions, which is just like when you're doing watch expressions when you're debugging through Visual Studio, where you don't actually do assignments or statements like var a equals something something and then console write line. You're actually just putting in the expression like item or 5 plus 6, and it'll just show you what the result is going to be. It'll output it for you. Right now there's 3 different versions. There's the free version, which has no autocomplete. Let me tell you, you don't know what you have till you lose it, that type of expression. Holds true especially for autocomplete, because when you're typing in, you don't really remember what the casing is or what all the properties and methods are. You, believe me, make a lot of mistakes that you take for granted with having the autocomplete. So highly recommend going at least the premium route, which right now is $39. There's also a pro version, which at the time of this recording, there's a special on it going on the website for $58. Regularly it's $75. So what it does is it gives you autocomplete, and it gives you cross-database query capabilities. So if you have multiple databases, you can query against them. But what's more neat than that is it has NuGet integration. So if you're using NuGet libraries in your project, you don't have to figure out what files you need to copy over to reference. You just open up NuGet, tell it this is these are the packages that I'm working with, and it'll automatically import them for you into LinqPad. So that's cool. So why LinqPad? Why LinqPad now? So recently I came across a tweet that said from one of the Sitecore developers who I follow. It said that the Developer Center, which we all know and love in Sitecore, may be going away with version 7.1 and up. With the version that's there now, 7.1 on the Sitecore website, it's there now, so that's good, the Developer Center. But just in case it was going away, I decided, you know what, let's just take his recommendation, take a look exactly what this tool has to offer. Which I did, and I have to say, I love it. There's just 2 things that you'll need to do to get it to work with Sitecore. You'll have to get the config file, and you'll have to put it somewhere where LinqPad's going to look for it. So the first one I kind of made easy for you by just putting it in my GitHub. You download it, you put in your connection strings, because you can't connect to my database unless I'm in Sochi and I'm on your Wi-Fi network. And then you just save the config file to the directory that it's going to look for. So this is not new, this topic, LinqPad and how to get it to work with Sitecore. I actually looked and Googled a couple of things before running into 2 blogs that I highly recommend that I was using to get this video recording together. The first one is Adam Kahn's blog on Sitecore, which essentially goes into the details. There's some steps skipped, but if you weren't born yesterday, you'll know exactly what to do to follow it. And there's Jim Scott's blog, which helped me figure out that command that you put into LinqPad that tells you this is the configuration file that I'm looking at. So now, without further ado, we're just going to skip right into the demo. Now, assuming that you've already downloaded LinqPad and installed it, we're just going to go ahead and run it. The first thing that we need to do is figure out where exactly the configuration is that LinqPad looks for. We ran the command from the presentation that I showed you, and it looks like LinqPad is going to look for this file in this directory. Now, my directory already has that file, but you're going to need to create it from scratch. I did say I made it easy for you guys to download my config file that I've saved for you GitHub. So here it is. You just type in the command and go ahead and get it. A couple things to note here is I took out the connection strings, so you're going to need to put them in. And I actually made some changes in the log for net section. The changes that I made, basically I was running into a lot of problems with the path and permissions, so I only left the log file appender that it really needs, which is just this one. So that's why there's no webdav, there's just that one. And also you saw me open up the directory, you probably saw a bunch of log files here. So the reason that there are log files here is there were issues that I ran into with the file paths, specifically having to do with directories. So I just, to take all the guesswork and faults out of this, I just said, you know what, I'm not going to use the console debug all that much from Sitecore, so let's just go ahead and put the logs in the same directory as the LinqPad executable. And by me doing so, everything just started working magically. The other thing that you're going to want to do is take a look at the data folder entry. So for me, for example, it's Sitecore 7.1. What you're gonna want to do is replace this with your Sitecore installation, and not just here, but actually do a nice little search and replace on it, because there's a couple of files that it looks for, like in your security directory under app config include. So just make sure that you go through it and replace the connection strings and your Sitecore installation folder, and you should be set to go. So what you're going to want to do once you download this and make your changes, whether you're going to do it in Notepad or Visual Studio, make sure that you run Notepad or Visual Studios, as the case may be, as administrator. The reason for this is any changes that you're going to make when you try to save them, if you have UAC installed, it's not going to let you save it unless you run in admin mode. So here's my file. You would just save your file same directory based on the file name structure that LinqPad told you. So once you have that set, that configuration file set, you can go ahead and start running LinqPad. By the way, you may have seen me that I'm opening LinqPad as administrator. Again, the reason for that is the log files that are being written are being saved to that local LinqPad directory. So unless you're running it as an admin, you're going to get an error. Alright. So this is, by the way, what I was telling you about. There's expression statements. Expression can be something like 5 plus 7. You hit play and you get the result. The difference between expressions and statements, this is not going to fly, just like it won't fly in Visual Studio. It's going to give you a nice little WTF error. That's neither here nor there, because if you really wanted to do something, you know, you could do something like var a equals 5 plus 7. Here I have an assignment. You know, this is a legit statement, and if I want to see what a is, I can just do a little console.writeLine. So that's really the difference. There's also other types of stuff here. SQL, VB. I'm not going to go into it because I just want to show you what you need to do to get it at the gate to get it to work with Sitecore. So once you have the configuration file set in place, you are ready to run queries. Now if you run something like, let's say var db equals Sitecore configuration factory get database. By the way, I memorized this command because of the many times that I ran it with like factories or the casing wrong, because this is the free version. because I haven't gotten the Pro or Premium yet, and I just basically memorized it based on all the errors that I ran into. So if you hit play and all of a sudden, well, this one, the query was successful, but if you see that you get an error saying that Link needs to close or abort, there's a reason for that, and that reason is your .config file is either not formed correctly, or you have an error there. I made sure to test the config file that I left for you in my GitHub, so fingers crossed you shouldn't have any problems with it. This presentation and this version of LinqPad is being run on my Windows 7 workstation machine. I mean, hopefully if you're running it somewhere else and you run into problems, just let me know. In addition to that, there's Adam Kahn's blog. He actually does a nice little, he goes into detail of troubleshooting some of the steps. Come on, control click. Nope, that doesn't work. So without wasting too much time, I just want to show you where that is in his site. Alright, so his post is up. So he's got a neat little section that tells you how to deal with the certain errors that you're going to get. By the way, I ran into this error before, and I took the liberty of removing the outbound filter index for you, so you should be good to go as far as this error goes. Hopefully these you won't run into either. Alright, so getting back into LinqPad. One of the things that you're going to need to do after the config file is in place is you're going to need to add your libraries, your references. You can add NuGet if you have the premium version, which I don't. So, there's your NuGet interface that you see in Visual Studio. So definitely worth it to get the version that's up. I think that was the Pro version. So what you're seeing here is you're seeing my DLLs that I've actually added from my Sitecore directory. So what I did is I went into my C inetpub root Sitecore 7 website bin directory. You can either add the minimal direct DLLs that you're going to work with, or if you're like me and just know that if you're running a demo, the law of the demo is something will go wrong, Murphy's Law and everything like that, I just added them all in, but you don't have to. Optionally, you can also add your project's DLL if you actually want to run statements and queries against your objects, which is kind of cool. Once you add that, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to set as default for new queries. That way, every time you open up LinqPad or you open up a new query, you don't have to do this every time. So set as default, we'll make sure that you don't. The other thing you can do is if you have certain imports that you need to put in there, like using, I love this by the way, you don't need to put using, so if I do that, it'll just remove it for me. But if, let's say, you needed to do something like you wanted the web configuration assembly namespace that you wanted to add, you can certainly go ahead and do that in here. I should be okay because the queries that I'm going to run are fairly simple. So once you do that, you're ready to roll. What I want to show you here is I wrote a little query here, a couple of statements. So here's what I'm doing. var db, I'm getting the master database. I set up two select items methods. The first one is from link, where I'm selecting all of the items under the home. So the // tells you that I'm not just going to get the children of home, I'm going to get everything. And I have a .where clause with a nice little lambda expression. Happy little trees, as Bob will put it. Happy little lambdas. So what I'm saying here is I want all the items where the template ID, toString, because by default it's a GUID. ToString is equal to this nice little GUID, happy little GUID. So I have that, and then my second statement is I'm going to do a query where I'm going to select items, same thing, but instead of running the template ID on in the link section, I'm actually doing it as a query. I could have also done it as a fast query. So I have the same statement here. Now what I'm doing is I'm going to compare the two accounts. If one of them is greater than the other, I'm not even going to go into the for loop, because in my for loop, as bad as this code looks, I'm actually just depending on I reaching one of the counts. So if items from query was, let's say, 17 and items from link was 20, I would get a system out of bounds exception. So what my code is doing here is essentially I'm taking all the items and I'm doing a two-column layout. The first on the left column, we're going to get the display name from items from link, and then the second one we're going to get from queries. So we're executing it now, and what we're expecting to see is left column and right column. There we go. You see the display names are identical to each other. So there you go. Very, very simple to connect it to Sitecore and to run stuff against it. You know, like I said, you can run fast queries so that when the apocalypse does come and the gods at Sitecore decide to take Developer Center, that's so near and dear to us, away from us, LinqPad will be there to save the day, allowing you to do anything you need to from a Sitecore perspective as well as a .NET perspective. If you run into any issues, please let me know. I would love to hear from you. And thank you.